Okay, what's up? Sam or Perugia. I'm just recording a small video. We'll do like a super small recap of the week one games, and then I'll do some predictions for week two. Week one, I think week one was always gonna be like the least competitive, quote unquote, not like as a diss to any teams, right? But it was just gonna happen, right? As we see, all the top seeds ended up winning. I think the only one that you could say was like closer, right, was Catface Ghost. Um, we can take a look at that. Map 1 was not close, and then map 2 was a 13-9, and then map 3 13-10, right? And we see like winning pistol and then losing right after is pretty brutal. And you're only getting 5 on split defense is pretty rough. Um, Other than that, I will say some teams looked better than I thought. Being honest, some teams looked worse than I thought. Like I thought, even though I had all the top seeds winning this game, I thought there was going to be more map threes or more competitive series. So maybe this some teams are, even better or worse than I thought. Other than that, I mean, I don't really think there's much to talk about with a lot of these series, right? So we'll just everyone's here for the predictions, so we'll do the predictions, right? This week is like the 1-0 matches and the 0-1. We'll just go in order of how VLR has them. I will say before we get into it, there's some good matches. I'm really excited. Like, I'm really excited for this week. I mean, hopefully I'm not jinxing it, but there really should be good matches. There's a bunch of series that I'm keeping my eyes out for. All right, let's get started. First off, there's SRG versus Sen Otters. I think this is a cool match. Blue Otter, as most people, or what used to be Blue Otter, sorry, now Sen Otters, right? Because Sentinels recently picked up the Blue Otter team, and they're doing like a collab. It's super sick. Sen recently has had a level up. I would say around like kickoff, like towards the end of last year, they were kind of ramping up, but especially come kickoff, they kind of had like a huge level up, right? Meta shifts, I think it really worked. It really worked in their favor, in my opinion. Um, and SRG, obviously, they don't really need an introduction. Best team in GCNA, best team in GC for a long, long time, right? So I think this is a cool match. It's kind of like the strongest team in history versus the strongest team of today, if you want to make that joke. I think it's cool. Um, but I think going off of last week's matches, right, both teams didn't really need to show that much, right? Sen kind of didn't really struggle against TV, and then obviously SRG didn't really struggle against Frost, formerly known as YDZ. I'm gonna say two. Let's do pink. 2-1. I have this going map 3. Maybe. I mean, I kind of want to be. I want it to be interesting. When you look at it though, I think SR will win based off of like fundamentals and stuff. But I think the Sentinels team will be able to outshoot on average, right? They have very good players, very good, strong mechanical players. I don't really think they had to show too much against TV. Neither have SRG, but SRG has had the show more in recent time um, with their stint in tier 2. Right, they had to play. So we'll see. I want it to be close. I think it'd be good to see SR challenged this early. I do think they'll still win. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a 2-0, but I want it to be competitive. Puppy Thieves, formerly known as the 100 Thieves, versus Wadada. So Puppy Thieves, I will say, let's delete this. We'll go to the series against Mask. I had this series being way more competitive than it was, and they kind of just took care of business. I think when you look at what Puppy Thieves are running now compared to what they were in kickoff, I actually think this is a team that benefits from Yoru getting nerfed. I don't think the Yoru meta really benefited them at all. I don't think Zori was the best Yoru, and she shouldn't be the one opping, in my opinion. Zori's a phenomenal jet, like a neon, and rifling, right? Also, they Puppy Thieves are now playing with Miara over Lydia. Lydia stepped down. Miara came into Recon IGL, and then they're playing with St. Claus over Misu, which now lets the smoke spot free up and moves Nora back to smokes, which in my opinion, and this is something I've been saying, Nora's best role has always kind of been smokes, in my opinion. I think she's really confident. Now they have a dedicated Recon IGL. They have St. Claus, who I think was phenomenal on Bakugods. And Zori doesn't have to be playing the Yoru. She can kind of be playing the Jet, the Phoenix, right, on Haven. And I think it just works way better. I think it fits. Like, this is a team that unironically benefited from Yoru getting nerfed. So I think they're actually in a good spot. But Wadada, right, still looks good. They've also had to show less in recent time, right, because they didn't have to play OQ1. So I'm going to have it 2-0 feels wrong. 2-1. We'll do 2-1. I think Puppy Thieves will have some ideas, but I don't know if it'll be like fully fleshed out in time. We'll have to see. Alright, next match. Monarch X, Frost White. This is our first 0-1. It's kind of hard to get a read on Frost White. Especially, it's honestly, it's hard to get a read on both these teams, right? Frost White had to play against SRG as their first match, right? 13-1, 13-5. I actually think they looked better on Split, despite Pearl being their map pick. Also, and I don't mean any offense, you're picking Pearl against SRG, who, as far as I remember, this was the one map that they did end up winning in Tier 2. And they've enjoyed playing the whole time. And if you've watched my videos when I talk about SRG, #ad, I've always said that I think Dodonut does better on these double initiator maps, right? Where she has Sarah playing like this Sova, and she has Alexis playing the Flash. Like, I think this is probably the one map you would ban, in my opinion. Obviously, she looked good on Split. Also, she was opping a bit on the defense side. But still, I do think that it's hard to get a read on Frost because you pick their best map and you're also playing SRG, right? On the flip side, kind of hard to get a read on Monarch X, right? They play Swim Check, and I think very highly of Swim Check. I also think they just, after map 1, at least in my opinion, from what it looked like, after map 1, they were just like, oh, well, we'll just beat this team anyway. I don't know how to feel about Monarch X. They're running double duel, but then they're running a no Viper split. And, like, the roles just, I don't know, the roles just keep changing. It feels so weird. I will say Monarch X 2-1. I'm not confident in it, but I'm also not confident saying that Frost would win. I need to see more from these teams, and I think I was very critical of both of them. I was very critical of both teams after OQ2. I think they truthfully just like aim checked people. I think on an average on a mechanical level, Mox will probably outshoot most of Frost. Yeah. Just know I'm not confident in it. I could see it swinging the other way. Okay. Ghost versus Mask. I actually think this is probably the best 0-1 match. I think this is a very competitive game. Again, we talked about how Mask didn't do that good against Puppy Thieves, and Ghost kind of struggled against Catface. I will say Thumper or Thump, their original duelist, I think they said they left Ghost. Which I don't know who's gonna be playing. I think as far as I'm aware, Ghost subs are Qdasa and Fangs. So I don't know who's gonna be playing in that position. And it's nothing against Thumper, but when I look at the Ghost Gaming roster and you have Thumper, Eli, and Vanitas who all want to be playing Duelist, it was kind of hard, and I think their comps are very interesting. They don't run a crazy amount of like double duel, right? They run like a double Inishi Haven, then they double duel, but then you look at some of their other series, and it's like you have Eli playing Breach, and I think Eli's a phenomenal Breach and just a good initiator. But it's like when you look at Vanitas and Eli, who all have experience on Duelist and they're good on Duelist, it seems kind of insane to not be playing it, a little more, at least in my opinion. And Mask, to talk about Mask, I was pretty shocked at their performance against Puppy Thieves. I think Puppy Thieves, again, I think they looked good. The new comps make sense with the Yoru nerf. I think it fits. But I was pretty high up on Mask coming into this tournament. And when I went and watched the VOD back, I mean, it looked rough. And it looked worse than when they played in OQ1, I think. When you could argue that Mask was worse during OQ1 when 100 Thieves qualified. It's hard to say, because do I think Mask could bounce back? Yes. But who is Ghost bringing in? What comps are they running? Are they just going to run the same comp? Like, this is kind of a hard match to call. There's a lot of unknowns. Like, I think Mask played really poor against 100 Thieves. But is that, like, their level now? Or was it just a bad day? And who's Ghost going to play with? I'll do 2-1. 2-1 Mask. It's the same thing as the Mox Frost game, where I'm not confident. I think Mask has shown that they look better than Ghost, like on average. I just hope Mask doesn't... I don't know. I think if Mask changed like their core identity of the comps, because I think their strength unironically should be that, at least from an eye test, their comps are very easy to call. Right? You have you have Swerve, Perma Neon, and then Snowy is floating between Tejo and Phoenix. And I think Phoenix is legit the easiest character to call in the whole game. You just play around orbs, you can fight. Like, the game plans are very simple. And if they change their core identity after losing to Puppy Thieves, I worry at least a little bit. If they change their comps, I have it 2-1 Ghost. But we'll have to see. Alright, FlyQuest Swim Track. I think this is such a good match. I think FlyQuest Swim Track is such a good match. Swim Track, we talked about already. I played against Monarch X. I will say, I won't deep dive into it. There was some Twitter stuff with one of Swim Track's players. I think they're just going to play with the sub if they have a sub. But regardless, I still think Swim Track, before we get into 100 Thieves, I still think Swim Track is a good team, even without Aluvili. I think just the core of that team is super good, and I would imagine they have a good sub. So, I'm not super concerned about that. FlyQuest, kind of handled business against Ouroboros. Again, I'm super... I was pretty high up on Ouroboros coming into it. FlyQuest was a really rough draw, because I'm also high on FlyQuest, but I thought Ouroboros would get a few more rounds. And then... Actually, we'll discuss that when we get there. FlyQuest looked good. Swim Track also looked good. But FlyQuest is probably practicing more as a team compared to Swim Track, and they're not having to do a roster change. But Swim Track looks good. I also think it's funny because Swim Track Blue is like a play on the FlyQuest red name. So it's kind of funny these teams are playing against each other. 2-1. I have a lot of 2-1s, I think. 2-1 FlyQuest. I'm expecting an OT on one of these maps. It'll be a good series. If the team I was helping wasn't playing, I'd be watching this match. And I will watch this VOD, assuming it is a close match. Catface vs. Sad. Sad played with a sub against Empire. They looked great. I think their Lotus looked good. Their Lotus comp makes sense. I will say, I'm a big fan. I don't mind ISO as much in the current meta, but when teams run the ISO and they have nothing to combo like the Vulnerable with, it is super irritating. This comp makes sense. Yes, you don't necessarily have a hard scan with Fade, but you're running the Neon ISO. You're kind of just allowing your ISO to go farm. And then you pretty much just win the A fight for free. Right? Like, you vulnerable A, and then you can salvo the choke. And if you contest it instantly, you're going to die to the salvo or take a huge chunk. But then you are giving the A space. Like, I think this comp makes sense. I'm a huge fan of the Sekia Cypher. I did end up watching this VOD, and just Empire was struggling so much with the early info. And then their split looked good. I think their defense looked great. And they're playing with, as far as I'm aware, Rosetta's a sub. So they're playing without the main duelist. And then, again, we talked about Catface against Ghost. I think their Haven was good. But I'm also not super high on Ghost. So I'm going to say Sad. I think I had Sad higher anyway. I think this will be my first 2-0. That's a horrible looking 2. Yeah, I'll have Sad taking this one. I think Sad looks good. They haven't shown too much. and they were playing with a sub, as far as I'm aware, in their first series. So, yeah. Okay. Ouroboros TV. We talked about Ouroboros a bit. I'll touch on what I was going to talk about before we get into TV. I am worried for Ouroboros, not necessarily gameplay wise, but mental. Like, when they lost to FlyQuest, which, like, if I'm gonna be honest, most people were gonna have FlyQuest winning that. You know, not in like an insult way, but it's like FlyQuest just looks to be better. They have, like, their whole team is experienced, and they've had this time to practice compared to Ouroboros, right? Um, but then when they lost to Ouroboros, I saw a tweet saying like Vienna, who I think is a key part of this team, playing the Neon every map, like Vienna was gonna leave, and then I heard somebody else left the team, and it was like imploding, and Zukos wasn't even there because they had Aki subbing in, and it's like I think Vienna's back. I don't know. Ouroboros should be beating TV. Point blank. Period. I think it should be a 2-0. We'll talk about TV a little bit. TV no longer playing with Sonder. They brought back in Leah, who was on this roster during the Breach Teo meta. Funnily enough, I we'll talk about TV some a little bit. I think yes, Sen is good. This team is not a double smoke team. This team is a double initiator team. I don't think they can, like, I don't think they should be playing double smoke Senti and then like a solo Sky. Like, I don't think that's what this team's identity is. When I look at this team, I see it as like a, you know, kind of let me get in your face, just brawl with you team, right? I don't necessarily see it as like a we're gonna default super hard thing. But again, I was pretty high up on Sen, so it's hard to say. I'm gonna say 2-0 or Boros, but let me redraw that, bro. That was fucking horrible. I'm gonna say 2-0 or Boros, but I'm concerned because if your team is like mentally imploding after one series and everybody's talking about leaving when you lose to FlyQuest, who I think you were never gonna beat, that is concerning. That was your probably the hard, in my opinion. These first matches for the teams that lost, except maybe Ghost, because Ghost's series was closer. For everybody else who lost, it's like you should be able to brush off this game, right? Like, this is probably your hardest match. Maybe not Empire, because, like, you know, you could say Empire was supposed to be more competitive. But for everybody else, it's like, this was your hardest match. Like, there is a tier gap, point blank period, right? Like, I'm just being honest. There is a tier gap between some of these teams. So, it should be less of, oh my god, we're so bad, how did we lose? It's like, okay, well, this is what we need to work on, XYZ. If your team is, like, talking about leaving and mentally implode, like, people are leaving after losing your hardest match, like, that is not a good sign. And if Ouroboros lose to TV, like, I can't imagine how bad it will be. Last match, talk about Hyperspeed Empire. Again, Empire, you could say, should have been doing better. This is their full roster, right? Miara, when they were under Ace of Hearts, it was Miara and Ariel. Miara went to 100 Thieves. Ariel's no longer on the team. So now they picked up Arthur and Sober Sushi. Sober Sushi is now their new Scan IGL. 13-7, 13-8, right? Not super close, but not like a blowout. When you watch Empire play, I don't think they do anything crazy, right? Like, I know Sober Sushi's the caller, but I imagine someone on it from the Ace of Hearts team probably helps with the mid round, or I've heard Arthur does mid round some. Like, I don't think they do anything super crazy, right? I think Peep and Clappy were like two people you looked at. I mean, Sia was definitely their best player this series. But Peep and Clappy were people you looked at when they're on Ace of Hearts to do good. They both had like a pretty rough series. I mean, you're taking 13 first deaths. Yes, you're the Neal, but you're also 2-5 on the Viper. That's kind of rough. But I also think Sad had a good game plan. We'll talk about why the hyperspeed. This doesn't need to be super talked about. 13-1 on Fracture. 13-6 Bind. First half of Bind was competitive. They were playing with a sub over Cross Unity, who's their IGL. I'm a little biased because I am helping Hyperspeed, right, as a assistant coach analyst. But from a non-biased perspective, I'm surprised that Hyperspeed picked Fracture, because when I look at this team, when I looked at Hyperspeed, like, I thought their Haven and their Lotus were their best maps. Lotus makes sense why you wouldn't pick it against Warada, because Warada as a team loves to play the Lotus, right? They're good on Lotus. They like playing it. I was a little surprised with Fracture. You can't blame it, maybe, right? Because, you didn't play it in OQ1 at all. Or OQ2, sorry. Or Q1 or 2, as far as I'm aware. So, yeah, I mean, we'll have to see, right, what happens going forward. I would like to see Hyperspeed lean more into the Haven or the Lotus. And as far as I'm aware, this week Hyperspeed is playing with their IGL. I think most people are gonna say 2-0 Empire. I don't think it'll be 2-0 for Empire. I think, again, you want to talk about matches that you can kind of brush off. When you're a team that's like kind of newly formed, you're doing role swaps, right? And then you're playing against Warada, who's one of the harder teams to play against. Like, you can kind of brush that one off. If Hyperspeed has a good game plan going into Empire, the Empire game, and they know how they want to deal with certain things, I could see it as like a 2-1 Hyperspeed. I think the safer thing is like, I feel weird, man, because like I work with Hyperspeed and I don't want to, like, obviously I'm confident in every series, right? So if this was me, I would say full biased 2-1, and this is because I work with them, right? And this is because like I believe we can win every series. That is me being biased, though. That is me like just like mask off kind of thing. I would say 2-1 if I'm biased. Most people, I would say, go for like a 2-0 Empire, unless you're like super down on them. I would have it as 2-1. If you want to get into like the analytical stuff, like, I think when you're changing, right, you changed out your IGL and your smokes, and in any roster, when you're changing out your IGL, it is a noticeable difference. They change out their IGL, so their map veto is gonna be different, and if it's going how I think it will go, then I think Hyperspeed has a good shot. Okay, we'll wrap it up. Recap. 2-1. 2-1. 2-1. 2. Oh shit! I need to delete this one. Mask Ghost is 2-1, but if Mask like overreacts from losing to a Puppy Thieves and they change their comps again from like the simple stuff, I would say Ghost wins. 2-1 with an OT for FlyQuest Swim Check. Sad 2-0. Ouroboros should be 2-0ing TV. That's also horrible looking too. Sad should be 2-0ing. Ouroboros should be 2-0ing TV. Hyperspeed Empire, I'm biased, so I'm saying 2-1. But I would expect people to say 2-0. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. There's good matches. I'm excited, and I think I'll be able to record an analytical video, assuming, because like there should be a close match that I could watch. I just don't want to, like, the only match I could have watched from last week was again Cat vs Ghost, but I made a tweet saying it's like I feel weird saying or making a video when someone on the team left right after the series, right? So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm excited. If you're playing in Swiss this week, good luck. Feel free to prove me wrong. And yeah, have a good one.